Welcome everyone to Monday Morning Morons for July 22nd, 2019. This week, I want to at least try to begin with something we can all agree on. Words. Or at least, why we have them anyway. Humans came up with words, or if you prefer to go even more simplistic, a certain conjunction of sounds in a specified order to communicate with each other effectively. Now, there are of course several different languages and even some regional dialects within a single language, but our ability to understand each other depends on us agreeing that certain sounds strung together in certain orders mean certain things. It's why we have dictionaries, so everyone can get on the same page and say, okay, here's what this conjunction of sounds means. Can we all agree on that much at least? Good. Now, why do I mention that? Gonzaga law professor, MAGA hat is undeniable symbol of white supremacy and hatred. Do you see why I brought it up?
You keep using the word. I don't think it means what you think it means.
Undeniable. Unable to be denied or disputed. MAGA hats being a symbol of white supremacy is not undeniable. In fact, I dispute it. I don't give a shit what your opinion of Trump is or his slogan. It's still an opinion. And your opinion, no matter how many times you assert it, is still just an opinion. And your opinion is not undeniable. As often as you folks claim that Trump is a white supremacist, you'd think there'd be a whole lot of obvious proof to back up that claim, and yet there isn't. It's just an opinion you've arrived at using guilt by association. Some white supremacists like Trump. So fucking what? Some white supremacists like Clinton, too. Remember this? Now, is "I'm with her" a white supremacist slogan now, too? Of course not. That'd be silly. Just as silly as MAGA being white supremacy. I expect better from a guy who teaches law. What's next, Bob? Professor, country music facilitates reproduction of racial and gender inequalities. I gotta say, Bob, no idea why you picked this one. You know I don't give a shit about country music. Don't get snippy with me, Bob. I'll turn you back into a blob again. A professor from Mississippi State University says that modern country music increasingly features representations that facilitate the reproduction of racial and gender inequalities. These representations do or can promote unequal relations between men and women and lead to bad outcomes, says Braden Leap, whose work can be seen in the journals Men and Masculinities and Gender, Place and Culture. Oh, now I see why. Weasel. You see it? Can promote. You know what else can promote unequal relations? Anything. You have successfully said absolutely nothing of any meaning. Congratulations, Professor Weasel. Next one, Bob. He's hedging his language with weasel words. When you throw around can, could, potential, possible, and shit like that, you're really just saying water is wet. So, I don't care what else he has to say. Ilhan Omar admits she may have flubbed facts in dramatic story she told high school students. Flubbed facts. That's an interesting way to describe lying to kids. Representative Ilhan Omar admitted that she may have embellished part of the story she told high school students in an apparent attempt to showcase racial and economic disparities in the country. The Minnesota Democrat recently told hundreds of Richfield High School students that about 5 years ago, when she was working as a Minnesota city councilman, she witnessed an example of injustice that shook her to the core. She recalled a sweet old African-American lady who was detained for a whole weekend for stealing a $2 loaf of bread to feed her starving 5-year-old granddaughter, according to the Washington Post, and screamed an explicative in court after the woman was fined $80 for the crime. I couldn't control my emotions, Omar told students, because I couldn't understand how a room full of educated adults could do something so unjust. Well, I can't say I'm surprised you couldn't control your emotions. You run entirely on emotion and completely absent of logic all the time. Now, if this was a real story, I would agree. Justice in that case does not fit the crime. But is that what actually happened? Let's just say, when the story comes from you, I seriously doubt it. Omar's story echoed the plot of Les Miserables. If true, it is also probably embellished, the newspaper claimed. City officials said that police are not allowed to arrest people for shoplifting unless there's a likelihood of violence or further crime. Typically, shoplifters are sentenced to attend a 3-hour class. Omar apparently flubbed some facts when telling the story to the students and told the newspaper that the woman may not have been just a one-time innocent shoplifter. She might have had prior arrests, Omar said. I'm not sure. The details might not have all matched, but that's what I remember. See the problem? That's not what happened, but that's what you remember because that's what you wanted the story to be. Now here's the thing. I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here and say you're not actually lying. You're just talking shit. Lying is intentionally saying something that isn't true. In other words, you can't lie if you don't know the truth. And you don't know the truth because you weren't interested in it. You saw a skin color and immediately assumed an oppression narrative because that's what you wanted to see. And that's the whole problem. You're not living in reality. You're living in some twisted little fantasy in your head where everyone and everything is racist, except you, of course, and the racist xenophobic system you despise so much made you a congresswoman to change the racist xenophobic system. You're cracked, lady. Seek a psychiatrist. Toxic time, Bob. New York sisters abused dad for nearly 2 decades because they said God told them he was unfaithful to his wife. Well, I mean, if God told them. 3 sisters from upstate New York were sentenced Tuesday to 2 years in prison after nearly 2 decades of physically and mentally abusing their elderly father, a man the trio disdained because they said God told them he was unfaithful to their mother. 2 years in jail for 20 years of abuse. Gotta love that male privilege, huh? Alyssa Petrocarlo, 41, Grace, I'm not going to keep repeating that name, and Annabelle were each sentenced to 2 years in prison on an assault conviction after prosecutors said they intentionally caused physical injury to their 71-year-old father beginning in 2002. According to the Erie County District Attorney's Office, Alyssa, known by her 2 sisters as the Prophet, claimed to have received several messages from God, including one in which the deity indicated her father was being unfaithful to her mother, Christine, 66. They refer to their mother as the Queen of God. I see. So they're crazy religious zealots with little to no understanding of the Bible they worship. How rare. After the almighty allegation of adultery, a claim which was denied by the man, the victim was no longer permitted to sleep in his bedroom with his wife and was forced to sleep on a couch in the kitchen. Prosecutors said this is when the physical and emotional abuse began. The victim was beaten regularly by the family females, and he was frequently forced to sleep in clothes since he was often chased out of the house in the middle of the night. The abuse reached a climax September 9, 2017, when at about 4 p.m., the victim was accused by his wife of defiling her name online to a friend. The 4 women soon surrounded the victim, and he was ordered to give them money. When he didn't comply, the youngest sister, Annabelle, choked him from behind and took $1,100 in cash from his pocket. Why in fuck's name do you have $1,100 in cash in your pocket? Whatever. The women began to kick and punch the man, who had fallen to the ground, and when the victim pleaded for help, he received none. He eventually managed to make it to his pickup truck and drove himself to Mercy Hospital in Orchard Park, where he was treated for a fractured rib and bruised spleen. Well, I should hope he learned his lesson then. Don't you speak ill of the women abusing you. He called home to ask permission to return, but was told by the women he could not enter the home during daylight hours, and if he did, they would break every bone in his body. The abuse continued until a friend of the victim contacted police to ask to conduct a welfare check. The 3 sisters were found guilty in May of second-degree assault. Annabelle was also found guilty of petite larceny and will serve an additional 6 months. Incidentally, petty larceny in New York is theft of under $1,000 in value. So at the very least, she should have been charged with 4th-degree grand larceny, which is a Class E felony rather than a Class A misdemeanor. Curious why they went with the lesser charge. I'm guessing it must be more of that male privilege we keep hearing about. The man's wife was acquitted. Oh, shit. My mistake. There's the male privilege in action. Get your daughters to beat your husband for 20 years and you walk away totally free of consequences because, everyone say it with me, patriarchy. This is one of the most horrific cases of abuse that has been prosecuted by my office, District Attorney John Flynn said in a statement. For years, these women emotionally, financially, and physically abused their own father. And for all of that, you got them 2 whole years behind bars. Most likely half that for parole, minus time served while the trial went on. Information not provided in the story, so I can't be sure, but my guess is they'll be locked up for about 6 months and let loose. Excellent work, Mr. Flynn. That's real justice there. All right, Bob, let's wrap it up with something funny. Video. Students sign fake petition to ban hurricane mascot at University of Miami. In recent years, a growing number of universities have faced pressure to change their mascots due to concerns over cultural appropriation and student sensitivity. Whether it's the state of Maine banning Native American mascots or students at George Washington calling for an end to the Colonials mascot, there seems to be a new mascot facing scrutiny every week. But what about schools with mascots named after inanimate objects or weather occurrences? Surely no one would support banning one of those mascots. Ha! Want to bet? To find out, Campus Reform's Cabot Phillips headed to the University of Miami, home of the Hurricanes. Armed with a petition and letter to the administration citing my concern over students potentially being offended by the hurricane name, Phillip began asking students for their support, quickly realizing there would be plenty of it. The moment he told students there was a petition they could sign to help students who were offended, they jumped at the opportunity. Of course they did. Fuck yeah, one student said enthusiastically, while another said, it's not a huge deal, but it's something, and it'll make a difference. There's going to be people who have PTSD, and this could fuck them up, one student said. Another thanked Phillips for the concern, saying, I totally get this. I think it's super respectful. While another said, awesome, good for you. For the love of... Ah, shit. You see what's happening here? These students are so desperate to be seen caring that they don't even stop long enough to think about what they're supporting. Someone somewhere might not like a thing.
Here I come to save the day.
Well, okay, so Mighty Mouse might be a bit over their heads. How about this instead?
Dun, dun, dun! I am Captain Chaos.
That's it for this week. Remember the social justice mantra: women are victims, men are oppressors, and feminism is just about equality. I'll see you all next time.